But let's give a nice loud welcome, a TBBO welcome to Dan Bavaro, Jason Medley, and Laura Sherman. Come on up, guys and gals. Thanks, Dan. There you go. Dan, I'm going to give you this mic so you have it right here. So before we get into any questioning, just letting everybody know, everybody here that has a phone is able to participate in the conversation. There will be a phone number up top that you could text. If you don't like texting, you could throw a hashtag TBBO on Twitter and put a comment or whatever it is you want. It will be on the screens, but I will get the text. And later on, when it's appropriate, I'll ask the question. So if there's any question that you'd like to have asked that I don't ask, feel free to participate in the conversation. And you'll see that as we go into the slides. So the first person I want to get into is Jason. Just want to touch base a little bit so we cover what you do. You've been in the real estate industry for most of your professional career, is that correct?
Yes, most of it, for about 14 years now.
So can you just talk about a little bit about the ups and downs you went through before you're doing what you're doing now? Now you facilitate a mastermind for real estate investors. Correct. That come together from all over the country, and the entry to the game is $15,000 per person per year.
Correct.
So can you just talk a little backstory on that?
Sure. To make a long story short, I got in the market back in 2000, got into the mortgage brokerage business, and I can remember I went through a period of my life where I had a lot of pretty serious health challenges. And I was actually on disability. Disability was about to run out, but I was refinancing my home, and I remember this 24-year-old kid pulling up my house to bring me my docs on my to do the refinance, and he pulled up in a brand new black convertible Porsche Targa, 911, and I was like, "Where'd you get that?" Or better yet, how'd you get that? And he's like, "From doing mortgages." And so that sickness turned out to probably be one of the biggest blessings in my life, because I left corporate America, because when I was supposed to come back, they wanted me to run, and I was yet ready to walk, if you will. So got into the mortgage business and thought I was cool. For 7 years was knocking it out of the park, doing 75 to 100 loans a month, really thought I knew something. And then the market crashed, and I realized I didn't know squat. But again, I also see that as a blessing, because it taught me at that point that I was being carried by the market. I wasn't really that good at what I was doing, but I kind of internalized that and realized that I needed to become a good marketer, if you will, so regardless of the market, I could do well. So again, got my butt kicked. I think that was 06, 07. But again, was actually a blessing that's really, really helped me get to where I'm at now. Bottom line is, lost everything, started over, and so from there, it was like, okay, I don't want to be a mortgage. I was kind of burnt out anyway. And as the market began to crash, it created an opportunity for distressed real estate. People were actually buying and flipping houses the same day, buying a house for $300,000 in the morning and reselling it later that afternoon for $360,000, right? Well, they still needed the $300,000. And so I took the skill set that I'd learned from being a mortgage broker and started a very niche type of funding business called transactional funding. So in other words, we would show up, lend that $300,000 for just a few hours until they resold it for $360,000. And they would take their profit. We would take a couple of points for the deal. Everybody won. The bank got rid of some distressed property. And through that, the way I got very connected to a lot of powerful real estate investors, guys flipping hundreds and hundreds of properties each year, and I could get a gauge on that because they were coming to us for money. And so I was in a mastermind. How many of you guys have heard that term before, mastermind, just so I know? Okay, cool. I was in a mastermind for my own business, and when I decided to start what I'm doing now, which is called the Collective Genius. And again, being an entrepreneur, how things change. The funding business I had, which was very, very robust at one time, a lot of lenders got to the point where they're saying, hey, if you're going to flip a house, you've got to hold it for 30 or 60 or 90 days before you can resell it. So that started to put the pinch on my funding business. But as the brakes were getting put on that, I began to kind of put my foot on the gas of the mastermind, which is now my primary focus. And it's called the Collective Genius. It's guys across the country that flip anywhere from, up to 600 houses. It's got a couple hedge funds in it that buy houses. It's got hedge funds in it that lend money to the guys that are rehabbing the houses. So just kind of a conglomeration of all different sides of the business, and I get them together once a quarter in a meeting and create an environment for them where they can end up doing business together. And Chris had mentioned these guys pay $15,000 a year to be in it, but they make a lot more money than that being in the group. So it's obviously it makes sense for them from an investment perspective to.
Jason, also to
become-
touch on that, you're selecting people that are actually doing deal flow, so you're not just putting anyone in that group.
No, and that's actually it's critically important if you're going to run a mastermind and have one that is going to actually grow and mature. Players want to deal with players is the reality of it. So I have to be very careful in choosing. It's an application invitation type of environment. And if you're going to run an effective mastermind and have people continue to come back year after year, you got to put players in a room full of players, and they'll end up doing business together. So yes, it's selection is you got to be pretty picky.
And we'll get into the marketing of all the businesses a little bit later. I want to go into Laura's story. If you could just pass the mic. So Laura, I want to start with the Antique Roadshow. And can you tell us your connection, because you own a financial services company, BKS. You're part of a partnership, right? But you have a interesting story with the Antique Roadshow. Who has seen the Antique Roadshow? Primo, okay. So if you could just tell us your connection to that show, because I think it's really cool.
So I'm like completely opposite to you in that I actually am very corporate America, at least my history was, and I interned at Chubb because they offered me $1 more than my other internship, which is how I got into insurance. And so when I was an underwriter at Chubb, I left Indiana and went to their home office, and we were asked to sponsor the television show, and it was actually the first reality television series. I like to tell people, like, we made it famous, right? The reality show trend. And they said, well, we don't have a lot of money. WGBH, the producing public television station, said, we don't have a lot of money to do all the public relations, the appraiser relations, and the guest traffic. Does anyone here want to do that? And I was like, I'm single, broke. I was like 22. And I'm like, and I can see the country. So I volunteered. So I did my day job at Chubb. And then I traveled with the Antiques Roadshow every weekend for 7 series. And I actually worked for them even after I left Chubb. So it was an amazing experience.
So when you first started helping get it off the ground, I'm assuming no one knew about Antique Roadshow. So how did you even get the traction to make it to get it started to what it is now, where everybody in this room knows about it?
Interestingly, there was no one that came because no one had known about it. And again, we didn't have any money. So I literally went to stoplights and I would knock on people's car doors and I would be like, hi. And I was like, and I had my whole spiel down, but we had, antique appraisers here from Sotheby's, Christie's. I'm like, surely you have something in your basement. Again, we weren't in Florida. Basement, attic. Come on, bring it down for a free appraisal. And so we started doing that. So the first season, I was the crowd control, and I would point them. I was like triage, and I would point them to the right appropriate tables. And we show up in Pittsburgh second season, and literally there is a line around the convention center, and we were like, oh, wow. What do we do next? So it was a pretty amazing experience to be part of all of it and really create the ticketing system. And
what did you learn as a business person in that experience that you carried to you?
Wow, I learned so many things. I learned it's all about the small things and really creating a connection with people and creating that client environment. So it's amazing to me how many people, when we were there, so Chubb, I don't know how much you guys know about Chubb, but when I was an underwriter at Chubb, we insured 74% of the Forbes 400 wealthiest people in America. So we would entertain them at the events. And I was shocked at the people who would say, oh, this napkin has the Antiques Roadshow. Do you mind if I take it? And I was like, of course, yes, take the whole pack. And I was like, if wealthy people want just a small slice of the show or the event, and you realize that it's not about the things they have, it's about the experience that they are desiring, right? So I've really taken that and really tried to create that within our own practice.
And also, I heard you mention, because on Katie's podcast, on the interview, that people have these items, and the value is not necessarily the money, it's the story of the family that had the item, right?
Absolutely.
Because like in this picture, you could see this lady, maybe she told her it's worth $500, but she's like, wow, she's just excited about the item getting scene, I guess, about, it's really the story they would share about.
Oh,
their
absolutely. And
great-grandfather.
what was amazing is now, again, this was a very small town at the time, and we were in Philadelphia, and we had this amazing little, I don't know, again, if, for those of you who are devotees, you may know the story better than me anymore, but there was a fabulous little El Conquistador parade helmet that a woman found in her attic in Philadelphia. And again, none of us knew what it was. I had it on my head. We were walking around with it in the green room. And they literally, when they donated it, the Smithsonian now has it, it was tens of millions of dollars.
Wow.
But the stories that these people had, and then there was a great story in Michigan where a woman had a Duncan Phyfe, again, I don't know how much you guys know about antiques, but a Duncan Phyfe sewing table that ended up being over $1 million, and she actually used it to sell to pay for her funding for cancer treatment. And so there were all these amazing stories from the show, and lifelong friends that I've created as a result.
So can you talk about your transition to the Tampa Bay area, and how BKS, just a little story of how you went from Chubb, big insurance, to being partners with two others and owning your own firm. And you're one of the fastest growing in our area. So can you just talk, how did that happen?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I'm very risk adverse, right? I'm in insurance, so I obviously like stability. I was very blessed that I was offered to become a partner at a firm in Atlanta, and I had a great mentor who I went to and said, I have to write my own check to become a partner, which was a lot of money. I was a single woman in my 20s at the time. And I'm very thankful that I did, because 6 months later we announced that we were being sold to Wachovia, and it was the second entrance into the insurance industry. So my measly, sum grew by 10 times overnight, kind of like yours, but yes. So I took my life savings, and my partner lured my husband, who's also here tonight, lured my husband down, because we had just gotten married, we loved Atlanta, and he took him out on his boat offshore fishing, and my husband came back and was like, we are so landlocked in Atlanta, we should really explore Tampa.
I love it.
Right? So really it's my husband that I can attribute all of our success. So we moved here, literally there were three of us. We didn't have a typewriter, we had no computers, it was nothing. And really we focused a lot on the culture and what we were creating and the people that we attracted. Because a lot of people think about insurance as a transaction. And if you can make it like you're talking to your best friend, over coffee, and you just happen to make a car change, it makes it a lot more, the experience a lot better. And people will end up referring you other people because they know that you're going to take care of them and that you know that you care about them.
Cool. So thank you so much for sharing that. And we can get more into how you look at your company and how you run it. Dan, I want to get into your story. You're from the tri-state area, my home turf.
New Jersey, correct.
Jersey, but Jersey, New York, Connecticut. There you go. We have one person there.
I got one guy.
That was John Mickle. I'm almost positive. So I know a lot of us saw The Sauce, and then you have a pizza. But can you talk about how you started out? Because you were growing up, and you were on the streets of Jersey, right?
Correct, pretty much.
So how did you find your way into business?
I guess at the time, like you said, I had an interesting childhood, mainly from, I'd say probably from like 13 to 19, it was pretty chaotic. So to make a long story short, I wound up getting connected with a group of individuals that owns quite a few businesses between restaurants, catering, asbestos removal. I guess you guys probably get the point. So no stereotyping, but...
Just think of The Sopranos and you'll fill in. Go ahead.
So that was kind of my life. So, excuse me. So anyway, I left school at 16, decided to leave, promised my mother that I'd do something with my life. So after, finding my way somewhat out of the street and into business, I wound up connecting with this gentleman who kind of showed me the ropes of business, not necessarily the right ropes, but I learned a lot. And that was in the food industry. So it was my first experience. I was at 17. We were catering movie sets in Manhattan. We would do private parties. You name it, I was there, and I was in charge of probably about 15 people at that age. So at that time, he was selling all his businesses off, and he said, "Look, I remember we were actually going to a party for The Sopranos, and because that was one of our accounts." And he's like, "Look, I'm selling everything. What do you want to do with yourself?" And we were on the Garden State Parkway driving north. And I said, well, you know what? I always see limousine businesses. He said, "It looks like a good business." So he's like, "All right, I got a friend. I'll introduce you to him. He'll show you the ropes." I said, "Fine." So a month later, with the help of my mother, bought a town car. I met this guy in Brooklyn. He said, look, I'm going to show you the ropes. I was like, okay, I'm going to learn the limousine business. So I was going from Freehold to LaGuardia Airport, which is like an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, and the guy would pay me like $25. I was like, I'm like, this is the ropes. So I did. So basically, I did that for a while, and then I said, you know what, I'm going on my own. I had a couple accounts. I did some marketing with American Express, and I think at that time I was probably about 19. So
So how did you wind up, because you started getting some really big accounts. Can you talk about the story how you landed HBO and some of the largest accounts in Manhattan?
all right, so HBO actually came later. I'll start with Citigroup. Actually, was one of my largest accounts, and then we'll get into the HBO story. So Citigroup, at that time, I had one car. I connected with American Express, and at the time, they would give their customer list out if you would offer a 15% discount. So what I did was I got all the people in my area that made like $200,000 or more and went to the airport or booked flights, you know, at least once a month. And one of those cards landed in the briefcase of the head of human resources for Citigroup. So his secretary called me one day and he's like, can you pick so-and-so up? I was like, sure, you know, what's the address? It was like 2 minutes from my house. I was like, this is perfect. I was like, how many times a day is he going to go? He's like, well, you probably take him once a week. Well, that once a week wound up being twice a day, 5 days a week, and that grew, you know, over the course of, I'd say probably 2 years to be a very large account. So from that point, I had to buy more cars because of the demand. So with HBO, you know, I had Citigroup, a couple of the small accounts, and then a friend of mine had a limousine business, a guy that I had met. And how I got HBO and United Healthcare was one day I was at his house and we were just talking business. We were having a drink, and his phone rang. And I heard him talk to the person. He's like, what terminal? I can't hear you, I can't hear you. And he clicked the phone and threw it on the couch. And I said, Joe, what are you doing? This is a customer. He's like, that's the head of HBO Sports. He's like, he'll take a cab. So unfortunately, this guy was on the wrong side of the tracks as well. So he was just washing, you know, kind of washing money through the business. And I said, look, I said, I'm trying to do this for a living, you know. I was like, I want that account. So we struck a deal for, I think it was like $7,000. And I had purchased HBO and United Healthcare from him the next day because I wanted that business. So basically, from that account, he never found out because he probably wound up in a trunk somewhere.
Are we streaming this live?
yeah. We're not streaming it, yeah.
So anyway, so with that account, it started out to be about like $2,000 a month in business. And then over the course of the next 5 years, that turned out to be like $1.8 million in business between the two accounts.
So you have an interesting thing, and this is because as an entrepreneur, and I know, Laura, you've seen this, in big corporate, things work differently. Can you talk about the one account that you were paid quite a bit of money to drive one person and why that is?
All right, so with the Citigroup business that I had, I dealt with like the top executives, probably like the top 20, and the top 5 had their own chauffeur, you know, services. It was paid by Citigroup. You know, they were armed guards and stuff. Nobody else could drive them. But there was one. I'm not going to relieve his information, but anyway.
No.
He was one of the top 5, and I had gotten the phone call from the corporate, you know, the headquarters, and they're like, look, we need you to take care of so-and-so. I was like, what does he need us for? He has armed guards and stuff. He's like, well, the wife is the problem. So I was like, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. We got the details. I went out. I bought him a $71,000 Escalade. Thing was decked out. And that business wound up being $250,000 a year, chauffeuring a guy and his wife probably a combined 50 blocks a day. So what would happen was the wife was so out of control. I later found out the reason why we had that business was because she was a liability to Citigroup. She was afraid that, they were afraid that because of her antics, that Citigroup would get sued. And so they wanted to farm it out, and I was the guy. So I went through 5 chauffeurs in like a couple-year period. And
You had to send your drivers into therapy,
yeah,
right?
3 of them went to therapy.
I can't imagine, like, Interesting stuff, right, at the corporate? So let's transition. So how did you wind up? So you sold that business.
Yeah, so I saw the writing on the wall. Obviously, with the financial crisis, all the banks were getting scrutiny. They started cutting down the expenses. Healthcare started to have some issues. That was like the bulk of my business. So I saw the writing on the wall, and it was time to go. So I connected to the third largest limousine company in the world, which is based out of California, and we had met a couple times, and that's it. I sold 2005, sold the company, and started consulting. I only wanted to do a year, but I wound up doing 3, and that's where I met that gentleman, Gary. He's got the green shirt. Stand up, Gary.
There you go.
So he's been working with me probably for the last 7 years. I actually called him one day when I opened my restaurant. I said, look, I opened a restaurant. What are you doing? He's like, things are kind of rough here at the limousine business. I said, pack up and move to Tampa. He called me 2 days later. I'm on I-4 and 275. I'm like, you actually left? He's like, you told me to come down.
So you actually went to Italy to learn how pizza is made in Italy. You went to Naples, right? Or Napoli?
Correct, yeah, Napoli. So I always wanted to own a restaurant because that was what I learned when I got out of school. So I wanted to do pizza, but I didn't want to do like your typical, street slice pizzeria. So I found this concept, Neapolitan pizza. There's probably like 2 in the country at the time. It's probably about 7 years ago. So I was making really good money consulting, and I had a lot of spare time. So I had 3 years to put this concept together. Went to Italy, went to the factories that produce our flour, tomatoes, cheese. Really spent a lot of time envisioning this. And towards the end, when I told the CEO of the limousine business, I said, look, I'm leaving. And he's like, why? What are you going to do, I was like, I'm going to move to Tampa and open up a pizzeria. He looked at me like I was high. So that's kind of what I did. So 3 years later, we decided to move down here.
And we'll go a little bit more into the story. I want to go over to Laura. So this is, and if you have questions, please text them in. So Laura, talk about, I'd like to ask each of you now, the marketing of your business. So Laura, you came here, a new partnership. You created BKS Partners. How did you even start to figure out, as a financial service company, how are you going to market and grow that business with your partners?
We started our business at an interesting time. It was 2006, so great from a financial perspective, but difficult from an insurance perspective. You may recall, if you lived here in 2004 and 2005, the string of storms that hit the Florida area. So they weren't really excited, and we had a lot of competitors who were trying to block, our appointment. And as an independent insurance broker, really, we're only as good as the companies we represent. So it was difficult, and it was also difficult. We didn't have a lot of money to recruit top talent. And that's really where the strategy that I came up with, I took a page from Chubb's playbook, which is they really start their and grow their own. So we hire people, a lot of people right from college, and train them our way. It was really a lot of nights and weekends. I didn't have children at the time, and my husband was traveling a lot, so it was a lot of work, a lot of time, but it really, again, all about focusing on creating a different experience for clients than it was typical in the insurance industry.
Can you talk about what a typical, sometimes you meet someone that's in insurance, how they represent that topic when you meet them, like networking sometimes?
How many of you are here in insurance? Anyone?
There's a couple.
Oh, good. Just you? Okay.
Well, no,
No, but I mean, how many of you, I think we're right below used car salesmen, or are we above? Above or below, right? So I think I meet a lot of people, and you can tell, they nag you, they're stalkers, right? So we try to not become, I call myself a pleasant stalker. No, I'm kidding. No, but it's not about selling people, it's more about educating. So in my opinion, insurance is kind of the last step in risk management. So if I can prevent losses from occurring and help people, then obviously they're a lot more inclined, and they're generally buying less insurance, which you may say on the front end, well, that doesn't make sense, why would you want to sell less? Well, because they appreciate that, and then they refer their friends, so now it's two. So it all kind of quadrupled from there.
And how important were the relationships that you made from Chubb for your company today?
Well, it was paramount, just because obviously they were our first insurer, which was fantastic,
right.
And they obviously have a household name, which is wonderful. And when you work at Chubb, it's very helpful. But so we literally started with 3 people in 2006, and now we have 185.
Wow,
Which is crazy, and it's all been through.
And would you say it's because obviously working nights and weekends and putting the sweat equity, but it's that culture that flourished and helped grow the company, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that is one thing that, especially attracting. So it's interesting. So I don't know if any of you have ever seen our website. We have invested a lot of time in applying for accolades. And it's not really from a client perspective, but when you think about talent and making people happy and making it fun. So we really have done everything from the best places to work, healthiest employer, Fast 50, all of those things. And it is a lot of time, although once you get the template down, we kind of have it. But it's really helpful for us to attract great people who are happy when they answer the phone, are happy when our clients come in the door. They remember our clients. They know them by first names. So it really does make a major difference.
How about, Jason, I'd like to ask you a little bit about how you were able to market and grow your mastermind group of those individuals.
Sure. I do some marketing that is extremely laser focused, and I do some that would be considered more of a shotgun approach, if you will. The marketing that I do is extremely laser focused. Is I'm blessed enough to be in a business where, for the most part, and there's ways around it if you use trust or whatever, but for the most part, if you buy a property, it's on public records, right? And so I can farm and buy data that says this person did 40 or more transactions in the last 12 months. That's obviously somebody who, if you're doing 40 deals a year, you know, that's kind of my bare minimum to be in the group. You know, you're doing pretty well. And so that's a very targeted audience that I can run through a direct mail campaign. It's not your typical postcard campaign. It's you know, something you're typically going to spend an extensive amount of money relative to a 35 cent postcard. In some businesses, those work amazing, but I have to work a little bit harder to get the attention of somebody at that level per se. So that's laser focused. If you're in a business where you can get a laser-focused list of your customers and you're not doing that, you are missing out on a lot of revenue. I love marketing, right? I'm always intrigued. I just had a baby, and it's like right before we have the baby, all this formula starts showing up at the house. And I'm like, how do they know I'm having a baby? And I'm like, they bought the registry information from
Wow.
Babies R Us. I would almost bet that's what they've done, right? And the cool part about that is that if you can get a laser-focused list, then you can talk to that customer in an entirely different manner, right? And you can really talk to them, who they are, what their needs are, versus, a shotgun approach. Versus, let's just say if you're, have a place where, a massage spa, right? Like that's tough to laser in on somebody. So that's something I do that's very laser-focused, and the marketing itself to me is critical. I am not a good copywriter, but I have paid a lot of money to some of the best, I would say, in the country. Anybody ever heard of Frank Kern? Oh yeah. Right? I wrote Frank Kern. He wrote my copy, right? He is because it makes all the difference in the world, especially when you're dealing with somebody who's high caliber, to get their attention, keep it, and then move them through a sales funnel process where they actually end up raising their hand saying, hey, I want to talk to you, right? Because I don't actually sell anything. My marketing drives a conversation, right? Here's what I do. I'm going to put a bunch of talented people in a room. You're going to make more money. If you want to talk about it, let's set up a time to speak, right? There's no sale or transaction that takes place, if you will. Then I also do some shotgun marketing, if you will, where I go to people. Does anybody know what solo ads are? Solo ads are an email drop where I go to people in our space who, anybody ever seen the guy Than Merrill on television? He flips houses on A&E, right? So you're shaking your head. Well, he obviously has an email list of a lot of people that are very interested in real estate, right? And so I might go to a guy like Than and say, hey, what's it going to cost me to have you hit the send button? I'm going to give you the copy, the email that I want you to send about what I do. What's it going to cost me to have you hit the send button, right? Just one time, typically. It's called a solo ad. And now he might have a list of 1 million people, of which, 20 of them might be at the level of which I'm looking to have them, invite them to my mastermind. So that's a shotgun approach, but the way you kind of drill that down, or the way I drill that down, is the copy or the message is extremely, for lack of a better term, blunt, right? I mean, it's within the first paragraph, it pretty much says, if you're not flipping at least 40 houses or more, reading this, it's a pretty long form sales letter.
Jason, talk about how long your initial mailing, how many pages is the first mailing?
The sales letter I send is, I think, 9 or 10 pages.
So it's a
Yeah.
9 or 10-page laser-focused marketing piece.
Yeah, and it speaks it says right at the top, this is
To
for
that
all-
individual.
Yeah.
To that individual. Now, I had asked you, how often do you mail this list? And I'd love if you could answer that too.
The process starts out with a sales letter. It's like you said, it's 9 or 10 pages, and it speaks very directly to the prospect, right? In a lot of cases, I'm saying, look, you're getting this because I've done my research. I know you're a rock star. I know you're flipping a lot of houses. I know you're lending a lot of, whatever it may be. So that immediately grabs someone's attention when you can speak to them in that way. But that is typically followed by a sequence of every 3 weeks where I will send them a CD, an audio CD. Whether or not they listen to it is irrelevant, right? The fact is that I'm going to a cold list of which I don't have any positioning with them or relationship. And eventually, every 3 weeks, I'm sending them what would be considered lumpy mail, right? It's something that's physical. You feel that you're like, I'm going to open it, right? And those CDs usually contain a lift letter or a cover letter, what's often called a lift letter, that details what's on the CD. And what's on the CD is typically, I've taken some of my top shelf guys and interviewed them about something that's critical in the marketplace right now that I know is going to grab my prospect's attention because it's a challenge that they're dealing with, right? And so that marketing typically consists of, one, addressing that challenge, and two, it always addresses one of the 3 biggest objections that I have to people coming to the mastermind, right? So the CD gives value, and it also subtly addresses the key objections that I
I'm
deal
going to
with,
assume
right?
one of the key objections is time.
It is time. And so, like, I might have, during this interview process, one of my guys might, say, look, my biggest concern was time. And as I began to talk to Jason, I realized that if I don't have time, that is, in fact, my very problem, right? If I can't
So
take...
your marketing materials answers the objections for them.
Exactly. My guy might say, I came to realize if I can't take 3 days away from my business to go to this mastermind, then is my business running me or am I running it, right? So your marketing, the CDs, the info CDs, typically cover an objection and then add value, if you will, right?
So Jason, can you talk about how you run your business? Because for you, having time with your family is one of the most important things that you do. Can you talk about how you look at your business strategically to
Yes.
serve that for you?
Yes, and all of this is like an evolutionary process from some of this kind of the story I shared with you guys earlier, right? When I was younger, I wanted to make money because I'm supposed to make money. I'm supposed to be successful and have lots of things and have everybody think I'm cool and all that, right? And then you get your butt kicked once or twice, and you kind of get things put in a different perspective. And so now when I look at my business, I think, why do I want, what the hell do I want to make the money for, right? What am I going to, okay, I want to make, I want to make $1 million. Okay, well, if you make $1 million and you don't know why you want to make $1 million, then you just say, okay, I want to make $2 million. Or I made 100 sales, now I want to make 200 sales, right? Because if you don't have a why, if you're not congruent with why you're working, you will just continue your business will it might continue to grow, you might make more money, but it's going to be kind of in a vacuum state because you're not fulfilling, why are you working? And so the reason that I have really, or I should say the way that I look at business now is, why do I want to make the money? It's because a perfect example, I have a 5-month-old little girl. I want to hang out with my 5-month-old little girl. I probably didn't start working today till 1 o'clock. I got up, I went to the gym, I came home, wife made me breakfast, I hung out with my little girl, and about the time, 1 o'clock or so, I went and got a little work done. That's more important. I could make a lot more money than I make, but that is why I make the money, and that's what's most important to me right now. I've become an expert at extracting the most amount of money per every hour that I put in. That I've gotten pretty good at, but I'm really in tune with why I work, because I want to have a certain amount of free time, or I want to be able to travel the world, or I want to be able to, and if you set your goals in that perspective, then making the money has one emotion behind it, right? So when things get hard, you don't just quit. And I think another thing I would probably want to share with everybody, I struggled with this. I'm going to be 43 years old next go around on the birthdays, but I struggled with it probably till I was 37 or 38, and I would say almost all of us do as entrepreneurs. I have struggled. I don't anymore. I'm relentlessly focused. But I used to struggle with focus, right? I used to do 10 things marginally, and now I do 1 or 2 things with relentless focus, and it's completely changed my life. I do those things well, and I now when I look at opportunities, because when you start to become successful, what happens? More and more opportunities begin to show up, right? You want to do this together, you want to do that together. And for me, I figured out that 99.999% of the time, the right answer is no. It is. It's no. Because those opportunities can turn into distractions. And then the best way, well, how do I determine if it's the right opportunity? And the easiest way for me to do that is to ask myself, not how much am I going to make? What am I going to make if I do this? But rather to start out asking the question, what's this going to cost me? Right? Okay, yeah, great, we'll do this project. I think we can make an extra 300 grand this year, but you're going to have to work an extra 20 hours a week to make the... No, not for me. Would rather be more engaged in, with my family, or just being able to have freedom, if you will, right?
And on that note, I saw, Laura, you shaking your head. Can you talk about how you focus in your team, in your company? And this is an amazing slide. Jason, if you give the mic to Laura, this slide is everybody that's on your team, and that's the word of what that company represents to them. And I believe yours was passion. Is that correct? Was yours? I don't know if it was in that picture.
Yep, I'm the green girl. Yep.
Okay. Can you talk about how you focus in people on your team to really be the best that they can be, because it shows?
Well, we struggle with that too. I think you're right on. I mean, I really do. I used to try to do everything, and I was not great at all of them, but I tried, and so I would just give up sleep or working out. So I've really tried to bring in the best people who do things. And someone once told me, if people do things 80% to what you would like them to be, then that's better than you doing it yourself and taking a distraction away from your primary focus. I've also read some great books. I don't know if you guys have ever read the book about writing your own family's personal business plan. And so when you are presented with opportunities, you ask, is it going to help my family achieve my business plan? And if not, then don't do them. Because I find I overextend myself, whether it's charitable endeavors, business endeavors. And so I've really tried, and it's hard for me to say no. I have a servant's heart. That's why I'm in insurance. So I find myself, and Jean in the audience will vouch for me, because she asked me if I wanted to do something today. And I said, I'm Jean, I love hospice and I want to, but I'm on a lot of boards and I have to focus on that. So I'm like, I'd love to have lunch and talk about it, but I'm trying to be better. So hiring the people, and sometimes even if you're like, oh, it's going to cost me and can I afford it, I will tell you it's worked for us every time, and I'm getting a lot better at it.
Dan, how do you evaluate your time? Because you also, I want to get into this in just a second, because you also distribute your sauce all over the country. So how do you evaluate time between the restaurants and the sauce?
I guess, what, I've learned balance the past year and a half. So I allocate certain times of the day to do certain things, and then I make sure I surround myself with really good people that I could trust. One of them is the gentleman that stood up before. He's been with me 7+ years. I don't know how he deals with me, but he does. And, I trust him with the restaurant, and he operates it, and he works very hard. As far as, our chefs and servers, we try and find the best. It's a very difficult industry. It's probably one of the worst businesses to get into, but, our turnover is extremely low. I think, how we keep these people and keep them motivated is lead by example is probably the most important way. They know I hustle. They know I don't stop. When they need me, I'm there for them. They know I spend time for myself. I spend time with the family. So it's example.
So talk about how you created the sauce. So you're getting compliments at the restaurant about your sauce. And then how were you able, because I know you leveraged relationships from your time owning the transportation company. So can you just talk about how the sauce came about?
Yeah, sauce came about when we first opened the restaurant. It was a Neapolitan pizzeria, and it was focused mainly on pizza and salads. So we didn't even really have sauce at the time. So basically what we did was 2 years into it, year and a half into it, we started making sauces and pastas so we could tap into the catering business. And so one day we had a big party. We made a lot of sauce. It canceled, and it was in a refrigerator. I didn't collect a deposit on it. It was just a busy time. And, we were just toying around with ideas, and I was like, you know what, let's just bottle it. So when I was a kid in New Jersey, my family had a small little farm, and, everybody would get together and we bottle tomato sauce and use it throughout the year. So I called my mother. She told me what to do. And so she told me what to do. We bottled the sauce, and I wasn't thinking about selling it. I just didn't want to waste it. So I put it in the back of the restaurant. It sat there for 3 months, and every time my wife came in, why don't you sell it? Why don't you sell it? Why don't you sell it? And, it wasn't a thought. And then customers started to ask, I wish we could take this sauce home. So 100 times from my wife telling me, sell it, I'm like, nah. One customer tells me, we want to take it home.
So you
I go
haven't heard
home
the
that
end of
night.
it,
I was
right?
like,
You haven't heard the end of it.
Anna Maria, guess what? She's like, well, we're going to sell the sauce. So she takes credit for that. So as she should, yeah, she deserves the right to that one. But so I contacted my attorneys, told them what I wanted to do. We spent 6 months designing labels, putting everything together. He's like, attorney's very close to me. He said, Dan, we're going to do this right, because if this works, I want to make sure that you're not going to have a problem later on. And that's what we did. We took our time. And once again, Gary over here started hitting farmers markets. My kids and my wife go to New Jersey to visit our family every summer. They stay for like 2 months. So that month of August, Gary stayed in my son's bunk bed. And every day he'd wake up and hit every retailer in the Bay Area. And slowly but surely we started to get sales. We started to get attention, and it just developed into a business.
Because I know this comes up, how did you get Costco or Price Club? How are you, because you're distributed in like 4 out of 5 of their regions, right?
Yeah, well, Costco, we're mainly in the Bay Area, but we'll be expanding in probably like the 4th quarter. So
did they come to you, or did you?
I don't know why. I don't know how it happens, but for some reason I'm like a magnet. I got a phone call on the ride over here from Lifetime Television, wants to talk to me, do an interview. I'm like, how do they know me? What do they want with me? So that's kind of what happened with Costco. They were doing a survey. They were trying to find products that they could launch in the Bay Area, and they stumbled upon the restaurant. They found the sauce. They read the reviews. They did the research. And they figured that it'd be a good fit. So I was actually with Gary in Chicago in the parking lot of the country's largest distributor to go pitch them to pick up our products to distribute all over the country. And we're sitting there, semi-nervous. The phone rings on his phone. He answers it. He puts it on hold. I look at him. He's like, who's that? He's like, it's Costco. I'm like, huh? He's like, it's Costco. So we set up a meeting. Of course, I had to do, the Italian, I got a smooge. So I invited all the Costco executives to the restaurant the night before, and we fed them and gave them drinks. And the next day when we had the meeting, all they talked about was Bavaros. And then it took 1 year to finally get on the floor, because we had to build a factory, we had to get certified, we had to go through all this stuff, because we were packing in the back of the restaurant at that time.
And this is the factory. This is in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that's the factory.
And you also co-pack other people's stuff too in your factory, right?
Correct, yeah.
So I asked last month, we had Toffee to Go, and they're like the world's best toffee, and Oprah had them on their favorite. What makes your sauce unique compared to the other sauce on the market? Because this is more of a high-end sauce, right?
Yeah, retail's around $7.99, some stores $8.99, it depends on where. So really what makes us different is the quality of the ingredients. We use fresh vegetables. We don't use seasonings for flavor. We buy Italian tomatoes, the highest quality, very expensive. Between the restaurant and brand of sauce, we don't chintz out. When when things really hit the fan, especially downtown, we had 2 years ago, it was really bad. It was a fight to keep that restaurant open. I never once cut quality of our ingredients, ever. I would, work harder. We'd, mess around with the hours so everybody got a fair pay for them, and we just all stuck through. But we never jeopardized our product. So.
And you had given me, you and I had done something with HCC, and you had given me a bottle, and I used it. And honestly, I never noticed the difference in a sauce, believe it or not. So then I got like some cheap sauce and there was a huge difference after I used your sauce. Big difference.
I'll tell you one of the
And I was surprised that I couldn't have, after you had this, it converts your palate because there's a big difference in the taste.
Correct. So to answer your question, what we do is, since we manufacture our product, we control how our product's cooked. So we cook our sauce the same duration of time as you would in your home or in a restaurant. Most of the bottlers in the country, if they bottle a sauce, by the FDA, you have to boil it for 30 minutes and then you could jar it. So if that's all you're doing because you're just trying to get as much production through the machine as possible, they're not technically cooking the sauce. So the average sauce in the jar on the shelf is not really thoroughly cooked. That's why the flavor profile isn't as strong as that.
So it hasn't all marinated together.
Correct.
Awesome. Jason, there's a question that came in from you, from Jason Mastropietro, and he said, how long do you market to an individual before you take it as a no, or do you just continue marketing to them regardless?
I don't really look at it as marketing to an individual. I look at it as I'm marketing to a list, right? Like I have a list of people who have bought more than 40 transactions, or bought or sold more than 40 transactions inside of a 12-month period. And so what I really do, and I think it's obviously critical with any marketing you do, is I just basically track ROI. When I first started with direct mail, I think I marketed to a population of about 1,700 people. And after we went through the sequence, which was the sales letter, and then 3 CDs, that was kind of the initial commitment that I made on my side to see if this would work. It was a $16,200 spend. And from that, I got 4 members. So 16.2 translated into $60K in dollars. And then I look at that from the perspective of most of my guys stay about 3 years. And so when you really look at that, the ROI is somewhere, it's well over 6 figures for a 16.2 spin. So that again, that's initially. And you're going to get you get the low-hanging fruit initially, and then your ROI most of the time starts to drop off. But I don't know that you would take it as a no. You just kind of measure your metrics. If that's another thing I've had to learn the hard way. When you become a seasoned marketer, like if you're not measuring your metrics, or you're walking, you're not really running your business. You're working on accident or making things happen on accident. Which if you're standing in a parking lot and Costco calls on accident, that's okay, But, or Lifetime Television. But that's how I would answer the question.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So this one's for all 3 of you, and Laura, I'll start with you. John Patrick wants to know, what was the single most valuable lesson you ever learned in business, a lesson that you've learned? Who hasn't answered that first, and then we'll just go around.
Be nice to everyone, because the person you're mean to always comes back around in an unexpected way, and they might be the person who's making the decision for Costco, it's just, so I think that's the biggest lesson, is like, you never know, and be nice to, your mom taught you, be nice to everyone, look people in the eye, but it's interesting because you never know people you meet, and you may brush them off and think, oh, who knows? And then they'll be your biggest referral source. So they'll introduce you to your next biggest deal or whatever. So it's amazing, is be present and be in every single person you meet. Really enjoy them, because you never know who you're going to meet from them.
And Laura, we have, just before we get over to Jason, one of your mentors is Vernon Jordan. Can you just talk about you have a lot of really cool mentors. Talk about the relationships you've been able to build in your business experience.
Well, similar to you, I didn't grow in the mob, but I grew up in a very small town. But I did grow up in a very blue-collar small town, and literally, it's
very
funny
similar, right? Very similar. Yes.
No, it was very. Sounds somewhat similar.
Right,
it was similar.
right. You can relate.
So literally, I'm from Nurkahaya, is what we call it. It's just so I'm like one of the first people from my family to graduate from college, and so again, being at the right place at the right time. So Vernon, I went to DePauw in the Midwest, and he spoke at my commencement address. I had no idea who he was at the time. Fast forward, I live in Atlanta. I'm at a benefit and at the governor's mansion, and he walked in because he happened to be there, and I walked up to him and I said, I think we share something in common. You went to my alma mater, and I started singing our whatever song it is. And he says...
Do you remember that song?
I said to Old DePauw, we raise our glass to thee, and then he started singing it. So he invites me to dinner with the governor at the time and his wife.
Of Georgia.
Of Georgia. And by the way, this is right after Monica Lewinsky, and I'm in my 20s, and literally you could see the governor being like, oh my God, this is another Monica Lewinsky situation. It was very funny. And so Vernon happened to be from Atlanta and came back a lot. And I think I was one of the few people who didn't ask him for things. So when I was offered to become a partner and I had to write a check, he's like, "You need me to help you with money?" I'm like, "No, I'm not asking you for money. I'm just asking, what do I do? I've never been, I didn't really understand what to do. And I really didn't have any mentors. I didn't have anyone who was going to become an entrepreneur or be in a business. And he always took time for me, no matter how busy, no matter what he was doing. He and his wife always took time. And he's been so sweet to my husband.
And for those that don't know him, he's kind of a power broker. He sits on
He was one of Clinton. He was President Clinton's one of his advisors.
But he sits on 6 Fortune 500 boards, or he has some kind of distinction where he's one of the few people that sits on so many.
Right, and he's an attorney by trade, and he worked he's with Lazard for a French investing firm. Yeah.
And who's the other gentleman?
So actually, that was you were asking about the Ferrari program. So it's just literally always, even if you at the time I sacrificed a lot. For my job. And so at Chubb, we did the sponsorship of the Ferrari series, and we tried to write a bunch of Ferrari owners, which was always the people who couldn't get insurance that would call, right? The people who had the DUIs, or the guys who had no furniture, but they had the Ferrari. So again, I'm in my 20s, I'm going every weekend, and then they, at the time they were like, "We don't have a trophy girl, can you be the person to give out the trophies?" But then it was interesting, I became a broker, and so I moved to Atlanta, and they called me, and they said, "Hey, how would you feel about having us be your client?" I was like, "What? Like, this is Ferrari, like, are you guys," I thought I was being punked. And because it was with obviously a very big powerhouse in New York, and so it was awesome. They were my first client, the Ferrari insurance program. So I nationally traveled and handled all of Ferrari, which is pretty exciting.
The rumor has it that Dan's relatives made that happen, that connection. No, I'm just kidding.
I really was in the mob, absolutely.
Ferraris have a trunk.
Gary said that he doesn't think Ferraris have a trunk. Okay, let's go to Jason. Jason, you were going to say greatest piece of advice, greatest learned lesson. Go ahead.
I think for me, like a lot of times we can make business too complicated. I think that the simplest words of advice that I could give are just do what you say you're going to do. Like, if you can just do that day in and day out, you will have some level of success from a business. In any aspect of your life, whether it's personal relationships or it's business. If you just become a man or woman of your word consistently, day in and day out, you should do pretty well.
That's great advice. Yeah, Dan?
What was the question again?
Greatest learned lesson or lesson in business that you care to share?
I guess, surrounding myself with people that are way smarter than me has been very helpful. And, I believe, especially in business now, obviously my life's changed since I was 17. But, you become people when you hang around them. So obviously back then it was a different crowd. So, mingle with the people at a level that you want to be at. And I think that that's important.
So there's a lot of questions coming in, but I just want to go through the slides. So this was, Dan, this is one of your, so that's fresh ingredients right there?
Yeah, those are Fresno peppers. I don't know, I think he's making a sriracha sauce.
I know this gentleman, he's like a famous chef or?
No, he is an actor. He was on Breaking Bad and a bunch of other movies.
So he's a big fan of your sauce?
He's a huge fan of my sauce, actually. I met him at the Emmy. I was actually at the Emmy Awards. I was invited, again, one of those magnet situations. I'm sitting, I don't know where I was. I got a call. It was actually the board for the Oscars. And they said, some celebrity chef was in a magazine, and in the interview they said, well, when you don't want to cook, this is in California, when you don't want to cook, what do? I open up Bavaro's sauce, and they're like, what's that? Some guy in Tampa is making pasta sauce. So anyway, that led to a call from the Oscar Association, and then it was like 2 days notice. I was like, I can't bring sauce and stuff in 2 days. They're like, all right, we'll book you for the Emmys. So my wife and I, we flew out to California, and we cooked sauce for the famous people for a couple of days, and we had a really good time.
And that's the guy from Dancing with the Stars, right?
Yeah, he was very attracted to me for some reason.
Yeah.
He was ready to go. Very nice guy, though. Actually, everybody there, out of all the people that was there, 98% of them were down to earth, which was great.
Now, can you talk about the expansion plans for Bavaros? So this is, I got this off of Facebook, you're expanding into Orlando?
Correct. So basically what this is, over the past, back what Jason was saying, I'm definitely a person that if I say I'm going to do something, I'm doing it, no matter what I have to do to get it done. So unfortunately, in business, you're going to find hundreds of people that like to talk and actually don't do anything. So you're going to have to figure them out and weed them away until you find people that actually do stuff. So for the past couple of years, I've been approached probably by about a dozen different groups, some very large, I'm not going to use names, and some very small, about how they want to expand Bavaros and become part of the brand. So actually, I spent 4 months with a very powerful group, and I kind of steered away from it. They were looking to raise $6 million. They wanted to expand the facility, open multiple restaurants across the country. Everything sounded good, and they were going to raise the money. I was like, all right, this kind of sounds too good. Until I realized that they wanted like $500,000 salaries to open up the door, and I'm like, wait a minute. I was like, I'll take what I need to survive. I don't need $500,000 to do this. And inside starts ringing. It's my street sense. The Raiders are going off. Get the hell out of here. Something's going down. And that's basically what I did. So this picture here is actually the gentleman on the left, the first person with the shirt, no, right there. His name is Chirag, and he's an attorney in Orlando. And he's eaten at my restaurant quite a few times since we've opened. And he called me one day, and I didn't know who he was. He's like, look, how about licensing the brand in Orlando? I got a group of guys, one guy owns a bunch of hotels, the other one's with American Express Travel, Safaris, just a wide variety. And I was like, and I just came off breaking that deal with that other group, and I was like, you know what, I'll entertain this one more time, and then I'm closing the door on this whole expand the restaurant deal. So I met them in Orlando, and he's like, I don't know if you know who I am. My name's Chirag. He's like, one night you were making pizza about 3 years ago. And he's like, short guy, Indian. And I was like, you know what? I know who you are. And then when I saw him, I was like, holy shit, it is you. So anyway, they put this group together. And after 3 months of negotiating, we signed a 3-year, 5-restaurant expansion. 5 restaurants, 3 years we're going to open. So that's what that is right there. That's kind of the celebration dinner. And as you can see, Gary's in the back to the left. Left.
Oh, sorry, here.
All the way back. There you go. He's standing over there.
So let me, and then I want to ask Laura, because Laura, you deal with a lot of high net worth individuals, and you deal with a lot of different business people. But before we get there, can you just talk about what you did at HCC to poor Gary? You gave the kids. Can you just talk about what happened? We were speaking at HCC, and it's just a funny story. So this is lunchtime. We're speaking at HCC, and Dan says to the kids.
Yeah, I said, well, one of the professors is like, whoever shows me a receipt from Dan's restaurant will get 20 credits. And everybody went nuts. So I never went to college, so I'm like, I guess that's a good thing, 20 credits. So I stood up, I was like, whoever goes, I give 25% off. And then they went crazy. And this is about like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I leave, it's over, and I go to lunch with one of the other people on the panel. And we were talking about it. She's like, should you call the restaurant? I was like, nah. I was like, it's going to, 3 o'clock we close. Nobody's going to go. I get a call from Gary. What are you standing on a corner handing out gift cards?
All those kids were so hungry they packed this whole restaurant.
Like 30 people showed up at the restaurant. We know Dan. We want to, we want this, we want that. We know Dan. So it wound up being pretty good.
Tell people where your restaurant is, because people are asking where is it located. They want to go check it out.
Restaurant is on Franklin Street, 514 North Franklin Street, downtown Tampa. You type the name Bavaros and you'll find us. It's pretty simple, and you'll probably see Gary there. So say hello.
If you know where the taco bus downtown or where CVS is, it's like
and
right on
if you do mention it, I'll do 20% off.
Boom. Thanks, Dan. Laura, so this is what I want, if you could just talk about this. So you deal with, from your days in Chubb, you deal with really high net worth individuals. Can you talk about what it takes to deal with someone of that caliber in general, to understand, because there's a reason why your firm has grown. You guys take a very different approach when you're managing people's finances. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So a lot of our clients are captains of industry, so it's great because I feel like I get to do my own little experiment and ask them and learn from each one of them. So I feel like I have like 1,000 mentors. But really, there are a lot of things like you were saying. Do what you say you're going to do is a big one, right? And make it easy. Make it easier. So a lot of times in insurance, like there's a lot of things people have to get. So I'm the person who calls now and gets all those things for the people. So anything that you can do to make yourself more valuable to your clients is huge. I mean, I can't tell you how much they appreciate that. I'm trying to think of all the things that we do that make our clients so appreciative.
You're very, so what I'm trying to get at is you're very confident in your abilities to deliver. So you're able to play at a very, because you have some billionaires that are clients of yours.
We do.
So you're able to play at a very big level because you're confident in what you're able to deliver.
So, I mean, yes, and I am a student of the game. So I am constantly doing research and learning and writing white papers. And that's another way to become an expert is start writing white papers. I mean, I was not a writer by trade, but now I've written like 20 articles on different risk management topics because people want to think about it. Would you rather have a water loss happen and turn it into insurance, or would you rather prevent the water loss from happening? So now all of a sudden I feel like I'm a contractor, and I've done a ton of research. I mean, my 5-year-old knows if there's a fire in the house what to do, and I've taken my kids' experience and said, okay, how can I teach my clients about their children? Because they're obviously, physical damage to property is not important, but protecting their family and their loved ones is. So again, I'm not talking about the block and tackle, because they're like, well, Laura, you're the one that's supposed to know that, so you should just do it. But they do want to know about how to protect the things that are most important to them.
So the last question for each of you, you're all raising families. How do you, I don't want to say work-life balance because that doesn't exist. How do you do work-life integration? Because that's more of a, so Laura, since you have the mic, just, you have 2 beautiful boys, I got them up there.
Oh,
can you talk about work-life integration for you and your family?
So I unfortunately work a lot more hours than it sounds like my friend over here does, and I'm thinking I'm going to try to invest. I'm going to beg him to invite me and help me get out of the insurance industry. So I try to always, I mean, we eat dinner every night together. That's like a commitment, and and it's interesting. There's a great book that I will tell you that I absolutely love. I saw him speak. His name's Sean Anker. It's called Happiness Advantage, and it talks. There are so many statistical things about if you're happy, how much more productive you'll be, how much more money you'll make, how much longer you'll live, and how people will be attracted to you, and it really is all very true. But we talk about, you know, what are you appreciative of? What are you thankful for? So we spend a lot of quality time together, and then also weekends are off limits for work. Like I try, I mean, I check my phones if like someone has a claim or something like that, but I'm always home and I'm always committed, and we take a lot of time to vacation because I can work remotely. So we try to spend a lot of quality time together because I do work long hours and I work after they go to bed. So from like 6 to 8:30 is all about them, and then I'm back on. So if I email you late, I apologize, but yeah.
Jason, how about you? You just had a newborn. February 16th.
That's me looking hot at 3 o'clock in the morning right there. Thanks, Chris. No. For me, I don't know that I put a tremendous effort into scheduling it per se. Just the business, the model, the way my model works, if you will, is like next week we're having a quarterly meeting, right? I will probably go from 8:30 in the morning until 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, Monday through Friday, work like a fiend. But then for 3 months, we don't do it again for 3 months, right? So, not that for 3 months I'm
still marketing,
on the beach
yeah.
in Tahiti sipping my, you know, it's not, I don't want to totally misconstrue that, but it does allow me for a lot of free time, given the way that we have a meeting, 5 days, work my tail off, and then we don't necessarily get back together for 3 months. So a day like today, even though I have, you know, the show starts on Monday, like I said, I got geared up around 1 o'clock. I was still up early, you know, doing things, whether it's working out, eating breakfast with my family, or just hanging out with my little girl. But for me, it's really the model. That's kind of what enables me to, you know, not be complete. But it's about learning the lesson. I mean, I lost my first marriage because I was a workaholic, you know. I worked constantly, you get disconnected, you go your separate ways, and you know, you live and learn. That's not how you want to do it, especially after you split the stock, as they say, right? Yeah, you're like, I don't want to do that again. But no, I think so. But no, one final thing before I turn it over is I think that you have to, just as you spend time planning your business and mind mapping and trying to create a predictable future in your business, you have to do the same with regards to your personal life, on whether it's physically, spiritually, mentally. You have to put forth the same amount of efforts to achieve the same balanced results, if you will. You know, and use your business as a tool to where, although you might be working, it fills that balance. Use your business as a tool to make a difference. I love the picture you just had, right? Like, you have a culture at your company, right? That's a way you make a difference. They're working, but it looks like they're having a lot of fun, right? Looks like your employees have joy, right? You give other people joy, you have what? Joy, right? So try to find ways. Sometimes that takes effort in itself, just shutting down for a day or two. Like, how can I use my business to impact the world or change somebody's life or what have you, you know? Because that's very rewarding.
Can I also just say, get involved in the community, because we make every one of our colleagues have business plans, and they commit to at least 2 charitable endeavors. And I will tell you, it feeds your soul, and I hate to say it feeds your wallet because it shouldn't, but it's amazing how you get out there, and it does help, because people want to do business with people who are helping the community be a better place. So I completely agree with that. In fact, I have Children's Dream Fund here tonight. Cynthia Lake, I'm on their board, and they're an amazing organization. But I'll tell you, it fills my soul, and it also helps them if I can work with others.
And if Jason could just touch on what he's doing next week, a little bit about, all 3 of you do a lot of charitable giving. Jason, you just want to talk about the project that you're up to?
Yeah, we're going to do something really, really cool next Wednesday, because I'll have next Wednesday about 70 folks from all across the country. Again, fairly high-level folks, and we're going to turn their world upside down Wednesday. They have no idea what's coming, but we're going to transform the collective genius, which is the name of my business, to the generous genius. And they're going to walk in that room, and when they walk in the room, there's going to be 7 tables there, 10 people at a table, and there's going to be T-shirts that say thegenerousgenius.com. There's going to be bank bags filled with money and a video camera on each table. And we're going to say, you have 1 hour to appoint a leader and develop a plan, how to take the 10 people sitting at your table to walk out, get in the cargo vans that are waiting for you when the bell rings in 1 hour, and spend every dime in that bag, video record it all, and change somebody's life. You got 4 hours to pull it off, and when you come back here, you got to take all that video and cut it down to 10 minutes, and we're going to finish the day watching all 7 videos.
Are you going to post them online?
Yeah, we're gonna post them online, and that's something for me that I'm using my existing group to do that, but kind of my heart right now is beating towards developing unniche masterminds, not around real estate, but that have an equal focus on social entrepreneurial aspects as they do just getting together for business, right? It's kind of like a tagline we've thought of as, don't just fill your bank account, fill your heart. And so that's what we're going to do next Wednesday. It's going to be cool. I'm excited about it.
And if anyone's in the room that could help with getting some media attention, please talk to Jason after. I'm
Yes,
sure
I
there's
would be
someone that could help
greatly
connect you, because I
appreciative of
think
that.
that'd be great. If you give the mic to Dan. Dan, you get the last word. As your Uncle Vinny told me, we guaranteed you get the last word. You have 5 kids, and
Yeah, I
you're doing
got
all
5.
this as you're raising a family of 5, and you're also married. You're married to a Greek girl, right?
Correct, Greek, yes.
Very good, very good. So, what is it like? And you do a lot of charitable stuff for colleges too. You like getting involved with HCC, SOUSF.
We probably handle I'd say probably about 20 to 30 charitable events a year, donating food and services and stuff like that. So that's kind of how we give back to the community is feeding people. Granted there is advertising for us and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, for us it doesn't really matter. It's giving back and making sure that we reach people and we give to the community, because without the community we're nothing. We wouldn't have sauce in 1,000 stores right now if the people of Tampa Bay didn't support us. So we're not a Fortune 500 company, but we can give food to give back.
And how do you allocate your time? Because you got the 5 kids. You got a lot of great pictures on Facebook of you and your kids just playing around and having a great time.
Yeah, well, that actually, we're in Chicago there. We actually drove up, and that was for a trade show. So we took the trip, my wife and the kids, and they never seen Chicago, so I had a 3-day business journey up there, and they came for the ride. So they got to see Chicago. We were in Louisville. We stopped in Nashville, a couple other things on the way down, and then we made a family journey out of it. But, you know, dedicating the time with the family is very important. I usually wake up around 6 during the school year. I make my kids breakfast and lunch 5 days a week. They go off to school. Usually I'll drop them off. I'll head to the gym 3 days a week. After that, I hit the office, spend the day there. 5, 6 o'clock I leave. I go home. I cook my kids dinner probably 7 days a week. I spend 2 hours with them, so figure about 8:30 they get ready for bed. I'll stop by the restaurant maybe if they need me. If not, I'll go to Starbucks and I'll stay there till they close at 11 o'clock. I'll go home, I'll take a shower, and I'll work till I fall asleep, probably about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I do that probably about 6 days a week. That's my schedule. So I know that those slots that I'm with my kids, I do my best, no matter what is going on, to give them as much attention as possible. And then every Sunday, I take my kids to church. They all go to Sunday school and stuff. So it's kind of how I divide it up.
St. John's?
Yes, St. John's.
The Greek church.
Correct. I actually
Very nice.
converted, which is a pretty great experience, probably about 3 months ago. So I'm probably the only Italian restaurant owner that's Orthodox.
The big fat Greek family converted you in.
You know what? It was well worth it. I actually went to confession for the first time. My wife's like, "You're going to confession?" And she's like, I was with him for like 2 hours. He's like, the priest is like, "I don't ever want to hear from the age of 13 to 19 ever again. You're good."
And on that note, I want to, first off, Jason said something, and I think it resonated with everybody in the room, but say what you're going to say and do what you're going to say. Basically, honor your word. And the 3 of you, we're just very grateful. I told Katie and I talked about it, so like any individual could have been part of this platform, and really grateful to all 3 of you for sharing the platform and sharing your stories and being part of the Tampa Bay community and growing your businesses, your teams, your families. And from the entire TBBO community, thank you for coming out on a Wednesday night, sharing your story away from your family to be with our family. And we are forever grateful for the stories you guys share. Thank you all 3.